Yeah, thank you very much. Before I start my presentation, first of all, I'd like to thank Professor Koo because he gives you the best overview about what the urban regeneration public project means. So before I start, I just want to show you a small 3-minute movie of our operation in Marseille, and then we'll talk.
For more than 20 years, EUROMEDITERRANEE has been designing, developing, and building the sustainable Mediterranean city of tomorrow in the heart of the Aix-Marseille-Provence metropolis. This program of national interest, governed by the state and local authorities, has become an accelerator of attractiveness and of unprecedented economic, social, and cultural development. The project has generated more than 37,000 private jobs, 6,500 public jobs, and has created more than 5,300 businesses. The largest business district of Southern Europe offers 7 main sectors of activity: real estate and construction, green growth, digital industry, logistics and international trade, banking and insurance, health and tourism. The vocation of EUROMEDITERRANEE goes beyond the International Business District and its 650,000 square meters of office spaces. Indeed, piece by piece, the puzzle is taking shape, imbricating public and private facilities, a generous retail offer, housing, infrastructure, transport, parking, parks, and public spaces. It is this urban mix that EUROMEDITERRANEE proposes for the Aix-Marseille-Provence metropolis. There is a reason for this. It is not enough to build a city to attract businesses, talents, young people, and families. It is also necessary to bring life. From an offer of housing to the culture and even education facilities, the EUROMEDITERRANEE perimeter brings together all the necessary attributes for a successful investment and business base. EUROMEDITERRANEE. Future happens here.
Thank you very much. It took us more or less 20 years to achieve what you just see on the film. Let's talk about 2 minutes about Marseille. Marseille is a very old city. It's been founded 26 centuries ago with a very, very idea. It was to be a port. So everything we had, all the economy, all the working force, all the city actually was designed 26 centuries ago to be a port and only a port. But the thing is, Marseille is still the second city of France, but what happened to the city actually happened pretty much the same all over Europe. Marseille in the 1930s was the third port of the world. If you want to go to Asia, you have to go to Marseille to get a boat. So at the time, we were like preeminent cities in the world. But what happened to Marseille happened more or less for every major harbor city in the world, which is Barcelona, Marseille, Hamburg, Lisboa. Every of these cities after the Second World War lost their influence. And what happened basically is you see that's very small part of Marseille. Marseille is a wide and spread city. It's twice the size of Paris, but you see it's 4 times smaller than Busan. but nevertheless, you see everything was designed at the time for the city to be industrially functional. So actually, we didn't do a urban regeneration operation not to make it nicer, but basically to save the city. You see, the original port of Marseille was located here, in the heart of the city, but in the 1970s, they moved the port, exactly like Professor Koo said, 80 kilometers from here. And finally, this original port, who served the city for years, went slowly by slowly decreasing activities. 300,000 people used to work for the port in the 30s. Everything we had, all the economy was based on this industry. And when we lost the economy, we lost most of the city actually. So what happened is in 1995, we faced this critical situation that we have no chance of doing something else. We didn't take the right turn like other cities in France. You take Lyon, for example, they start on a silk business, they move to petrochemical, and then they move to a business of banking. Marseille, we remained the port we used to be 26 centuries ago. So in 1992, we faced a situation that 26% of the population is unemployed. And at the same time in Europe, and it started in Barcelona, cities start to create this urban operation to regenerate the economy, to revive the city, and also to work on the image of the city. So that's when the French government and the city of Marseille decided to team up to create the Operation EUROMEDITERRANEE. And why we were targeting the port? Because the long activity who finally deserted the area left a lot of brownfields, a lot of spaces, and exactly like Liverpool or Barcelona, everyone wants to put his hand on these places because the idea was to do and to make a beautiful waterfront. But we didn't start like that. I must tell you that we talk about Haven City with Professor Koo. Haven City is 170 acres of land. EUROMEDITERRANEE is 500 acres of land. It's the biggest operation of that kind in Europe. So actually what it means that at a certain point in 1992, the city and the state of France team up to create what we call a national interest operation. EUROMEDITERRANEE, it's a public body. It's a urban and development agency in charge of running this project. So you see that's the site of the operation. That's the old port of Marseille. It was founded 26 centuries ago. Alongside the northern facade, the industry developed itself in the 19th centuries. And for a long years, everything was blocked to the city. Means the port were deep inside the city, and you couldn't even use or see the sea for a long time. So that's another scene of the perimeter. So what we do basically, I told you, we are a public body. We are an instrument to bridge public and private fund. What it means, we get financed by the government and by local authority with a sharing key. With this money, we buy the land to private owners or to the port authority or to the electricity company or the railway company. When we get the land, we do a master plan according to what happened in a larger area. And then our job is to find the right public and private investor to build the project. We go global. We say in France, urbanism is seen on a global way, on an integrated way. Means you can't separate transport from public equipment to private equipment. We do everything together, and our job actually is to manage these different scales. In the urban business, there's three factors that you find all the time. It's the scale, the context, and the time. The idea is not turning Marseille into like New York or Busan, or turning Busan into New York. You have to match the context in your scale of time and in your scale of size. And that's very important. That's what basically that's our main mission. We find a urban strategy. We do, of course, financing, promotion and marketing for sure, but you should know that in France, urban planning or urban development is controlled and run by the local authority or by the government. In our mind, you can't give away land to the private sector and say, okay, do whatever you want with this, I don't mind, because you are responsible for the primary equipment, for the infrastructure you need for a project, and if you don't control your urban sprawling, it's going to cost you money and it's going to get your city into trouble. So exactly as Mr. Koo said, we firmly believe in France that the authority should stay in control. I give you quickly some figures about the operation. More or less 600 million euro were invested in the operation, worth of 2.5 billion euro worth of private investments. How did it go? For each euro I get from the public sector, I maximize this investment towards private investor. Means I buy the land cheap because at the time the value were nothing, so I sell it at a higher price with construction permit, but with the program I selected, and that's how I'm making the finance to pay what Professor Koo said. The goal of this project, it's quality, it's urban space, it's the street lamp, the bench, the trees, it's the surrounding. Building worth nothing if there's no surrounding. The quality of a project relies on the public space, on the outer space. And also when you work on ports mainly and you have the sea access, you have always that temptation to block again the view. You should clear the things and make the things free for people. So that, once again, we insist on quality, and quality get a price. And this price, no one wants to pay for public space because it doesn't make money and it costs for maintenance. So that's why we manage, with the money we make, to finance this public space, which is for us very important. Of course, we work on sustainable development like everyone in Europe and in the world, but we do it our way. We said that we're matching the context. You know, Marseille is a deep southern city in France. It's very hot in summer, very cold in winter, but this is not Iceland or Busan. So every technical, how can I say, sustainable development in Europe is based on Northern Europe cities. So every regulation, every technical appliance, every policy is made for southern cities, made for Malmö, for Copenhagen, not for Marseille. But I have to be as sustainable development as I can, but for that, I have to match my context. Means I have to use what we call it easy tech, low-cost technology to save energy on my buildings because I have a cold season and a hot season, and cooling a building costs a lot. So I have to find the good way, the good manners, technically speaking, to make it cost as low as possible, but with quality. For the past 20 years, of course, we look at each other. We are twin city with the Hamburg Hafen City. We know all the operation in Europe, and we find out that there's some basic driver to succeed. Every operation is different. There's no magic recipe or magic cuisine in the urban development, but nevertheless, there's some driver you have to be careful of if you want to succeed. The first is governance. Once again, we firmly believe that local authority, public authority, state should stay at some extent in control. When we say partnership, private and public, it's actually a negotiation. I give you the land for a reasonable price, but then I keep my hands on the architectural design, I keep my hands on your programmation. It's dealing, because land is gold. We're going to talk about that afterwards. Global planning, of course, because it's not only what's happening in my small zone, it's what's happening on the bigger scale. And of course, promotion advertising, that you know. Why we believe that state and public commitment are very important? Because it's an asset to secure long-term investment. Why? Because the private investor, they want to make money out of it. But they know that I'm backing up by the government and by public money for the past 20 years. So for them, it's a reassurance for a long term, because once again, these big operations are on a long-term vision. We've been doing the job for 20 years. We're looking at about another 20 years to end up the project as it is now if we don't extend it further north. Land is gold. Why? Because most of the cities I met, whether it was in Africa or in the Middle East, they say, but I have no money to invest. The only thing I got is land. So every investor, every private investor, every developer want to put their greedy hands on the land because that's where the money is. So it's not because you don't have money, but you have land. And the land is a key for developing your zone, your area, your operation, but it's also a key to fail. If you give away your land like this with no control, then honestly, you're going to get yourself into trouble. That's why also the more land you control, the more you can anticipate a long-term planning. But once again, it's all about negotiation, public to private sector. It's not black and white. It's always shade of gray, I would say, in French. And that's basically what we learned from our experience for 20 years. First of all, these operations are made for the population because, generally speaking, urban change creates anxiety for people, especially when they're very attached to their city or their land. If you start to do some work without consulting the population, you can be also into a big of trouble. Political consensus also is something that you need, because without the support of local or government authority, you won't get very far. When we say think big and start small, it's because this operation takes a long time to start, and it's running on 20, 25 years. So you have to have a broader vision, but start as soon as possible. Like an example, if you have like an old warehouse that you can refurbish to give away to some artists, do it. Because that shows people that you can deliver in time. Because once again, people can see alteration in work for years and say, but it's not coming, and what's in for me? So you have to give away a lot for the population. When we say beware of benchmarking, it's because this job of urban planning, it's all about benchmark. Everyone wants to do the same and to have the same. The museum, the tourists, the nice marina, the waterfront, the Fab Lab, the cluster, the whatever. Everyone is targeting the same clients and the same targets. There's a very good example, like in Spain, if you take Bilbao with one museum, which is a bad example because it's a good one actually. With one museum, they changed the fate of the whole city. But if you take Valencia, they invest 500 million euro to create a Formula One circuit and to have an America Cup based on the port. America Cup is gone, and they have no more Formula One in Valencia. So they lost 500 million euro on taxpayer money, just because they want to go on international level. So once again, beware of what your neighbors is doing. I'm French, this is Marseille, I'm not going to compete with Japan or something else. And also, these operations have a strong vision, but never underestimate or overestimate the impact on the population or on the territory around. Every time you do a little operation, a little something on the ground, there's always something happening next door. These projects are living organisms. You can't decide it to bring life. It's a long, very long process. That's why we said that being creative costs the same. Instead of looking all the time on the benchmarking world, try to see what's good for me, what's in for me, what's my population want. Do they want a promenade? Do they want a museum for children? It's also to listen to the population and see also what's good for them. And finally, we say right time, right size, right expectation, because every of these operations are different contexts, but also they are different way of working. Euromed, the model has been designed with 100% public governance and public funding, has been designed for a dedicated task. There's many other systems of governance, but still, once again, we in France believe that the authority should stay in control of the operation. Et voilà. I'd like to thank also the people from the forum to bring me down here. And if you have any question, be my guest.